About 2,500 million years ago, the tectonic plate of India split off from the west coast of Africa and drifted away into the open seas. India continued to drift north until it plunged under the belly of the Asian mainland, causing the most massive upheaval on the face of the planet. Major Hari Ahluwalia was a young officer in the Indian Army when he climbed Everest in 1965. He was a member of the first Indian expedition to successfully scale the mountain and one of the first to reach the summit. Our Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, awarded him India's coveted Arjun Award, and India had a new national hero. But within 2 months, he was wounded in combat along the Indian-Pakistan border and permanently disabled. Despite this setback, Hari continued organizing mountaineering expeditions and writing books about his life and travels. It was as chairman of the Youth Exploring Society of India that he invited me to film an expedition he was planning along an ancient trade route connecting India with Central Asia and Tibet. As most of the route lay within modern China, this would be the first time any group was allowed to make the journey in its own vehicles, a diplomatic breakthrough and a personal triumph for Hari. In 1962, a border dispute between India and China had erupted into a brief war, which left our two countries estranged for the next 30 years. In the two most populous nations of the world, a generation of young people had grown up knowing little or nothing about one another. Hari's idea was to encourage peaceful dialogue between India and her northern neighbors through new cultural exchanges. In Beijing, he met with the president of the Disabled Federation, who, like Hari, is confined to a wheelchair. As it happens, he is also the son of China's leader, Chairman Deng Xiaoping, and thus perfectly placed to help Hari fulfill his dream. I live in Calcutta, and I make films about India. My country was run by the British for 200 years, yet it preserves an ancient culture that conditions every aspect of its daily life. Because we live in a world of our own, separated from the north by politics and geography, I have always wanted to see what lay just a few hundred miles from me, on the other side of the mountains. Excited about Hari's proposal, I abandoned my new idea for a feature film and began to think about journeying along the ancient Silk Road. The first place I decide to visit is the Asiatic Society. Founded by Sir William Jones in 1784, the Society pioneered the rediscovery of Asia and its past. All the early expeditions were organized and monitored from here. I am suddenly filled with curiosity and an impetuous desire to delve into all the rare books and manuscripts on its shelves. Marco Polo's Book of Travels describes the wonders of the Silk Road, cities far greater than his own, and a world more magnificent than anything imagined by the insular, backward Europe of the 13th century. But he was a late traveller. The Silk Road was one of the greatest trade routes in history, and men had already been travelling on it for 4,000 years. Before sea routes were discovered in the 15th century, this trans-Asian highway was the sole link between East and West. It ran from Xi'an in China all the way to the Mediterranean. There were, moreover, many tributaries to the mighty river, not least of which were the caravan routes across the Himalayas between India and Central Asia.
Dear Goutam, you'll be delighted to know that we now have all our permissions. Because of the current turmoil in Afghanistan, we cannot drive through the Khyber Pass into the Central Asia as planned. All the members of the expedition, including the jeeps and equipment, will be flown from Delhi to Uzbekistan on the 18th of May. I believe I told you about my London-based friend Michael, who is a filmmaker with a long-standing interest in Buddhism. He has wanted to make this trip for a long time, and I'm sure he will be immensely helpful to you. Do please get in touch with him.
Would you like some tea?
Thank you. Listen to what Marco Polo had to say about the women of Hami. They had a very nice custom. He said, I give you my word that if a stranger comes to a house here to seek hospitality, he receives a very warm welcome. The host bids his wife to do everything that the guest wishes. Then he leaves the house and goes about his own business and stays away for 2 or 3 days. Meanwhile, the guest stays with his wife in the house and does what he will with her, lying with her in one bed just as if she was his own wife. And they lead a gay life together. The women are beautiful and vivacious and always ready to oblige.
I'm not sending you there.
Well, it's also very hot. It's 40 degrees centigrade in the shade. That's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. They also have the largest cockroaches in the world. Anyway,
Sounds like a terrible idea.
I'm preparing for the trip. There's some wonderful books here. Look at this.
We don't. Those are
So
still.
this is, Bukhara and Samarkand, the old pictures of the way it was in the 1890s. Look at this stuff.
Oh, beautiful faces.
Do you realize how long Hari had to wait for permission for this? He started organizing this expedition 8 years ago, and he just got permission now. And if we don't go within the next 3 weeks, we can't go at all.
On the day of our departure, we all assemble at Hari's home in Delhi and wait for our jeeps to arrive. The expedition includes Central Asian scholars, scientists and doctors, as well as professional rally drivers and mechanics. At this moment, however, we seem more like a group of excited tourists. As we are about to set off, a coconut is broken open on one of our jeeps, the traditional Indian way of wishing us good luck. Our flight over the Himalayas is brief but spectacular. At last we are peering beyond the great mountain range that divides India from the rest of Asia. I find it hard to imagine how the old camel caravans could have travelled through such a forbidding landscape. What impact could our divided worlds have had upon one another, separated as they were by such an enormous barrier? Look round thee now on Samarkand. Is she not queen of earth? Her pride above all cities, in her hand their destinies? In all beside of glory which the world hath known, stands she not nobly and alone? From Tamerlane by Edgar Allan Poe. Our first port of call is the ancient city of Samarkand. In the 14th century, it became the legendary capital of Timur the Lame, or Tamerlane, who subjugated the whole of Central Asia with his scorched earth policy, but made Samarkand grander and more beautiful than any city before it. Within the mosque complex of Bibi Khanom lies the Gori Amir Mausoleum, where Timur and his descendants are all buried. Under Timur and his descendants, Samarkand's cultural life was progressive and free-thinking. Education was extended to both men and women, and scientific research was encouraged. The tympanums of the main portal of this madrasa or high school represent the starry sky, a reference to the secular science, particularly astronomy, taught here by Qadi Zadi Rumi, known as the Plato of his time. But Samarkand was already an important kingdom when an official of the Chinese Empire discovered it in 138 BC. This led to China learning about Europe, which in turn would give rise to the Silk Road. Following the Silk Road to the east, the next stop for any caravan is Bukhara, rivaling Samarkand in antiquity and importance. Bukhara was always a cosmopolitan city. Its citizens came from many cultures and included Jews, Afghans, Persians, Mongols, as well as Hindus. In the 1920s, there were still 2,000 Indians living here. They had special madrasas and caravanserai of their own. After the Arabs conquered Central Asia in the 11th century, Indian architects and engineers came north to work on the new cities. In Bukhara, there is a complex called Toki Savaton, constructed almost entirely by Indian master builders.
Бухара достигла своего полностью архитектурного завершенного комплекса. То есть архитектурно был создан город, который уже потом не менялся вплоть до конца 20 года. И по сегодняшний день в этом медресе продолжают учиться студенты.
We should continue to work together, for we are closely connected by our history through Buddhism, Islam and the Mongols. present times connect us as well. We are glad to welcome your expedition from India, as it will pave the way for future cooperation, and we want to encourage this process by offering you every possible assistance. Bukhara was a crossroad for trade, culture, and religion, especially Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Islam. All these left their mark on the city's architecture. And it is important for archaeologists to do this. There are Buddhist stories which suggest that caravans of Indian traders reached Central Asia as early as the 3rd or 4th century BC. Archaeology has shown that Bukhara has a history which goes back 2,500 years. Over this long period, the city experienced many triumphs and tragedies. The exploration of its different traditions will help the present generation discover their origins, who they are, and how their culture developed here.
The name Bukhara comes from the Sanskrit Vihara, meaning Buddhist monastery. According to records of Chinese pilgrims who passed this way between 400 and 600 AD, it was a major Buddhist center along the trade route from India. Today, Bukhara is an Islamic city. In Islam, only Allah should create human beings, so iconography is strictly forbidden. As a result, calligraphy and symbolic geometrical designs developed into a highly refined art form. The revival of Bukhara and Samarkand began in 1369, when they became the central cities of Timur's splendid Central Asian Empire, or Transoxiana. Hafiz of Shiraz, the greatest Persian poet of his time, composed these lines about the two crown jewels of Timur's kingdom.
Agar un Turk Shirazi badast aur dile mara bakhale Hinduyash baksham Samarkando Bukhara ra.
If that naughty Turk captures my heart, for the merest mole on her cheek, I would give away Samarkand and Bukhara. Hafiz was summoned to Timur's court to explain himself. Are you aware, said Timur, of how difficult it was to bring Samarkand and Bukhara into our fold? How could you think of sacrificing them for a mere mole on your beloved's cheek? Hafiz replied, My lord, it is precisely for this reason that I am only a poor poet. The chai khanas of Bukhara fascinate me. What do the Bukharans talk about over tea? Do they still mention Hafiz and Timur? Surely they discuss current matters like the breakup of the Soviet Union, market rates, and the local gossip. But I'm told they also recount the exploits of the incomparable Mullah Nasruddin. Variously referred to as a very stupid man, an incredibly clever one, and the possessor of mystical secrets. This old donkey rider is the light-hearted face of Islamic mysticism. Like the Sufis, the wise mullah was closer to the peasant than to the nobleman. His reputation spread by word of mouth rather than through books. Scholars have used a great deal of ink to describe the heavenly concerns of the Sufi mystics, but traditionally the mullah has little time for them, insisting mischievously, "I'm upside down." Sufi brotherhoods were very active during Timur's reign. One of the most important orders was founded in Bukhara and came to prominence under Bahauddin Naqshbandi in the 14th century. Although mystical, it was also involved in worldly affairs, a dual character expressed by its two basic mottos: find solitude even in society, and put your hand to work but keep your heart with God. Bahauddin Naqshbandi's tomb is one of Central Asia's most sacred sites and a popular place of pilgrimage. It is continuously attended by Sufi dervishes who live in the adjacent monastery and receive its visitors. Although the Naqshbandi Brotherhood played a key role in the expansion of Islam in Central Asia, it incorporated teaching stories and legends of other religions and is said to have been influenced in the beginning by Buddhism. Its main purpose was to integrate external religious ritual with inner spirituality. Sufism took many forms, but it always involved the experience of mystical union with God. Nowhere is this more beautifully expressed than by the whirling dervishes of Konya in Turkey. Their ecstatic, trance-like dances are commonly associated with the name of another Sufi saint from Central Asia, the great 13th century poet Jalaluddin Rumi. Sufism travelled from Central Asia to India, where it gave rise to a number of outstanding mystical orders and gained immense prestige among the common people, cutting right across caste, religion and cultural backgrounds. The Sufis received strong support from the Mughal emperors, who conquered northern India in the 16th century and gradually spread their influence over the whole continent during the next 200 years. Mughal art and architecture is among the most beautiful in the world, culminating in the supreme refinement of the celebrated Taj Mahal. The founder of the Mughal Empire was Zaruddin Muhammad Babur. He was the son of a local chieftain from Andijan in the Fergana Valley, southwest of Bukhara. The last great ruler of Central Asia, he was descended on his mother's side from Genghis Khan and on his father's side from Timur. He led his army over the Khyber Pass into India in 1525. His power rested on two major strengths, the use of gunpowder and his exceptionally fast and powerful horses. Fergana is the legendary home of the war horse, first discovered by the Chinese traveller Chang Qian a century before the birth of Christ. Although now long extinct, these so-called heavenly horses have been immortalized by Han and Tang dynasty sculptors. Despite his many years in India, Babur never forgot his beloved Fergana. The descriptions in his memoir, Babur Nama, are so precise and detailed that many passages still apply to what we see on our way through his homeland. He wrote lovingly of the green landscape, the many mountains and valleys, the clear streams, the profusion of fruit and flowers, and of course, the many beautiful women he had known.
Hoşingiz qarasını Tilini söyleter ya Ko'zingiz charosini Dilimni o'ynatar ya Hoşingiz qarasini Tilimni söyleter ya Ko'zingiz charosini Bunchalik cho'g' bo'lmasalar Buncha anor bo'lmasa yuz Bunchalik cho'g' bo'lmasalar Buncha anor bo'lmasa yuz Ular husn zebini ya Jazmaningiz jazosimi Ular husn zebini ya Jazmaningiz jazosimi
During Babur's time, Fergana was at the height of its prosperity, a land of abundance at the heart of the Silk Road. But after the discovery of the maritime routes, trade declined sharply. By the 15th century, it was already a forgotten backwater living on memories. The climate of Central Asia changed dramatically with the passing centuries, and many fertile regions along the Silk Road turned into desert wastelands. The same fate would have befallen Fergana had it not been for a great canal built in 1939 when it was still part of the Soviet Union. The Fergana Canal was one of the great collective efforts of that period. its many superstitions, and one I would devote many years of my life to. Yet this statue of Babur strikes me as a clear proof, if one were needed, that this dream has now come to an end. Babur's statue was secretly paid for out of funds reserved for a Lenin monument, and was brought out of hiding as soon as the Soviet Union collapsed. Ironically, it is Babur, the very symbol of India's secular heritage, who now provides an Islamic identity for the new nation of Uzbekistan. On the 12th day of our journey, we crossed the border between the newly created nations of Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. The two former states of the Soviet Union seem unfamiliar with the formalities of visas and passports and simply wave us on. Unfolding before my eyes are the forgotten images of my childhood.
Көңілді әнге қосып мен айтам ай бауырларым келген соң ай жарқыратам Өлеңді мен арнаймын Үндістаннан келген
Here are the wandering minstrels calling us to the ancient horse country of the Kyrgyz nomads.
Сол жағымда әнші қыздар, биші қыздар, ұлдар да бар
Here once more are the Tartars of the Golden Horde galloping across the steppes. Here, where Taras Bulbus reigned and Genghis Khan, where man invented the saddle and the stirrup, and a culture that would briefly dominate the world, the pages of my favorite storybooks come to life again. I see the legendary children who learn to ride before they can walk, and whose mothers still make kumis, the hard liquor that comes from mare's milk, and I remember how I once wished to be one of them.
Өлеңімді мен арнап бір келген екен бауырларға берек алыс айтайыншы ай
Recalling the fabled history of this land, as its mountains continue to rise up before us, I find it hard to believe that this was once the driving heart of Asia. There are similar places in the Indian foothills of the Himalayas where droplets from a cascading stream can resonate forever, and the ripples of a shepherd's flock dictate the silent rhythms of the valley. Yet familiar landscapes do not make for understanding. The Himalayan barrier and the colonial politics of the last 100 years make me a stranger here. What hopes or dreams, what underlying values do I share with the people of Kyrgyzstan? And yet the tempo of daily life and the old ways of this nomadic society strike a chord of sympathy in my heart. Bishkek, the capital of Kyrgyzstan, is a modern city built in the 1930s. It has a cosmopolitan air about it. People flock to its market from all the surrounding regions. Here, Kazakhs, Ukrainians and Uzbeks mingle with visitors from as far afield as Azerbaijan and Mongolia. There is even a community of Korean immigrants. However, the largest sector of the population is Russian. The market is called the Osh Bazaar and takes its name from an ancient Silk Road market town. As the word bazaar implies, it is more than a shopping center. It is a Central Asian crossroad where people of different nationalities gather and where the histories of their struggles with each other can be read in their contrasting features. Kyrgyzstan, like her neighbors, is a fragile multi-ethnic republic with a brand new market economy. Before coming to Central Asia, we had read that food was scarce and people did not have enough to eat. But we find the markets overflowing with fruit and flowers, meat and vegetables, all at reasonable prices. Yet I cannot help wondering whether Osh Bazaar will survive the onslaught of modern times, with its regional rivalries, new mafias, and consumer pressures. What will the future hold for these splintered people now that the ideals of the old communist order have so clearly failed them? With more questions in us than answers, we head toward the Tian Shan mountains and back into nomad country. Many Kyrgyz nomads converted to Islam only in the 18th century, much later than the people of the cities. Their folk history is a mixture of shamanism and the earlier religions of the Silk Road.
This has always been a sacred site. Today it holds an Islamic monument, the Burana Tower. Burana was built in the 11th century. A mullah would climb to the top of the tower every morning and call the people to prayer. The Silk Road passed through here on its way to China. When I was a child of 12, I remember a caravan passing by, bells ringing, dust billowing up in its wake. This place is an open-air museum. The tombstones are from Zoroastrian times. There used to be a town near here called Balokun. It was a capital city at the time of the Huns. Our ancestors also worshipped their nature gods here. This has always been a sacred site.
Kyrgyzstan has a multi-layered history, each layer resting on the one below like geological strata. But the newest layer, the topsoil, is a multi-ethnic one. The Islamic Kyrgyz now share their land with more than 1 million Russian Orthodox Christians, the most recent immigrants to this age-old cauldron of Asia. Kyrgyzstan has reverted to being an Islamic republic, but the reality is clearly more complex. Can this new nation really succeed without bringing all its people under a single banner? High up in the Tian Shan mountains, at a height of 5,600 feet, is Lake Issyk-Kul, the warm lake. It is so called because the water's high salt content prevents the lake from freezing even in winter. This inland sea extends for 114 miles and has long served as a resting place for the weary Silk Road traveller. The famous Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang wrote of sea dragons and dark rolling waves endlessly lapping the shore. The local people were shepherds and no one dared to fish in the lake. If a sea monster was sighted, it was considered an omen and travellers prayed for good fortune. Xuanzang might have been pleased to see one of these monsters, for he had reached the lake after a bitter mountain crossing during which a third of his caravan had died from starvation and cold. Despite its legendary monsters, Lake Issyk-Kul seems to me a paradise waiting to be discovered, and all the more alluring for being as yet untouched. When Xuanzang passed by 13 centuries ago, it was a summer encampment for the great Khan of the Western Turks, but his 100,000 warriors made no permanent impression on the landscape. Will future generations be able to say the same of us? I wonder. The descendants of the great Mughal Khans continue to ride their steeds from dawn to dusk. Cowboys have almost disappeared from the American West, but here in Central Asia, they still herd their cattle as they have done since time immemorial. They contemplate their fields and mountains at the end of a long day's work, oblivious to the march of history and the new troubled relationship between man and nature. Bactrian camels roam freely in the field beside the road. These double-humped camels were the mainstay of ancient caravans along the eastern end of the Silk Road. Each one could carry up to 60 pounds for 20 miles a day on little food or water. Their sense of smell alone saved countless lives, helping them find water by faint whiffs of greenery on the wind. I don't know what practical use camels could have today, but thrilled at my first sight of these free-roaming herds, I don't even bother to ask. Our jeeps climb all day until we reach the 8,300-foot Dolon Pass in the Tian Shan, or Heavenly Mountains. It is cold even in June. On the other side of the Dolon Pass lies the last stretch of road between Kyrgyzstan and China. We have already passed through the token checkpoints of 3 countries, all of them former republics of the Soviet Union. Now we are approaching a real border. On the far side of the next mountain range is the People's Republic of China. The first leg of our journey is drawing to a close. In my mind's eye, the map of Central Asia is no longer blank. It has been filled with a wealth of new images, many unbearably fleeting, and I wonder if I am any the wiser for them. Old blanks have been filled only to open up new ones. Knowing what I do not know, there is an urge to remain and learn more. Yet, I have been bitten by the traveller's disease and am eager to move on to new adventures. I used to think of the great nations to the north of us as somehow swimming in the mainstream of history, with India left far behind, paralyzed by the deep roots of its enclosed culture. Now I am less sure. On this side of the mountain, I see only more little worlds, different from mine, but equally rooted and self-enclosed. I am reminded once more of Mullah Nasruddin. What time is it in Central Asia? I hear myself ask. And then Nasruddin's reply, couldn't tell you. I am a stranger here myself.